They whispered
People
about
of this
him in
village,
every corner of
justice
the
is at
realm.
hand.
Not because AlphaKing Theron Blackstone
Witness
was
the
cruel,
fate of traitors.
not because he ruled with an iron fist or demanded blood tributes from his subjects. No, they whispered because he was too much. 7 feet 2 inches of raw, overwhelming power. Muscle density 40% above any alpha
Enough
ever
of this
recorded.
bickering.
A voice that
But my
could
lord,
shake
we cannot
castle
agree.
walls,
Then
hands
I
that
will
could
decide
crush
for
stone.
you.
And no woman had ever survived him. 21 formal bond trials, 21 rejections, 21 Omegas who took one look at their king and chose exile over his touch. Some screamed, some fainted. One tried to claw her own eyes out rather than face what awaited her in the royal bedchamber. The healers had a word for what Theron Blackstone was. Incompatible, unbondable, unfit. But tonight that word would take on new meaning. Because tonight 2 lives would collide in ways that would shatter kingdoms. One was an AlphaKing learning to hate himself. The other was an Omega learning she had nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. The Grand Hall of Shadow Peak Palace held 300 souls. Nobles in silk and silver, council members in their ceremonial robes. Guards lining the walls like statues carved from ice. Every single person stood in suffocating silence watching the dais where their king knelt like a criminal awaiting sentence. Theron Blackstone did not kneel easily. His massive frame fought against the positioned knees grinding against the marble floor that had never been built to support someone of his size. The formal bonding armor dug into his shoulders, black metal etched with silver wolves that seemed to mock him now. His long, dark hair fell forward, hiding his face, hiding the shame that burned through him like poison. On the platform above him, Lady Celestine Ravencourt clutched her silk robes to her chest. Even from 20 feet away, she trembled. Her perfect blonde curls shook. Her porcelain skin had gone the color of fresh snow, and her eyes, those ice-blue Omega eyes that every noble family praised as flawless, stared at Theron like he was death itself. Chief Healer Mordain stepped forward. Ancient gray-bearded, his voice carried the weight of 50 years serving the crown. He held a scroll that every person in that hall already knew by heart. They had heard it 20 times before. But this time, this 21st time, felt different. Final. The examination is complete. Mordain's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. The measurements taken, the compatibility assessed. Silence, so thick it pressed against eardrums. AlphaKing Theron Blackstone stands 7 feet 2 inches. Bone density registers 143% of standard alpha metrics. Muscle mass exceeds safe parameters by margins we have never recorded. His grip strength alone could fracture reinforced steel. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Theron's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. In the event of mating bond consummation, Mordain continued each word a hammer blow. The probability of severe internal injury to an Omega partner reaches 94%. Broken ribs, spinal damage, internal hemorrhaging. Even with complete self-control, which no alpha possesses during the mating heat, the risk of accidental death is, he paused. Let the silence stretch. Absolute. Lady Celestine's sob cut through the hall like a knife. She covered her mouth with shaking hands, backing away from the dais edge. Her father, Lord Ravencourt, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Protective, righteous, already planning how to spin this rejection in his favor. I cannot. Celestine's voice broke on the words. Tears streamed down her perfect face. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I cannot. He is not an alpha. He is a beast, a monster wearing a crown. The hall erupted, gasps, scandalized whispers. Some nobles looked horrified at her bluntness. Others nodded in grim agreement. In the back rows, a few Omegas clutched each other, thanking the moon goddess. It was not them standing on that platform. Theron remained perfectly still. He had learned over 21 rejections not to react, not to let them see the way each word carved pieces from his soul, not to show them that yes, he knew. He had always known. Every time he looked in a mirror, every time he accidentally broke a door handle or crushed a goblet without meaning to, he knew. Too much, too big, too dangerous, unfit. Elder Cassius Drake rose from his council seat. Tall and silver-haired, he moved with the calculated grace of a predator who had waited years for this moment. His dark eyes gleamed with something that was not quite sympathy. Your Majesty, Drake's voice dripped false concern. This council has watched you endure 21 failures. 21 brave Omegas who tried, who wanted to serve their kingdom, but could not overcome the insurmountable reality of what you are. He gestured to the crowd, playing to them like an actor on a stage. A king must have an heir. A kingdom must have stability. But how can we ask any Omega to sacrifice herself on the altar of royal duty when the cost is her life? Theron's hands curled into fists against his thighs. The metal floor beneath his knees groaned under the pressure. We cannot, Drake continued. And so with deepest regret, this council must declare what the healers have proven beyond doubt. AlphaKing Theron Blackstone is physically, fundamentally, irrevocably unfit to bond. He will rule alone, or, the pause stretched like pulled wire, he will not rule at all. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Abdicate or live without an heir. Either way, the Blackstone line ended with him. Either way, men like Drake won. Theron finally lifted his head, met Drake's eyes across that vast hall, saw the triumph there barely concealed behind concern's mask, saw the future Drake was already building, a future where the council held all the power, where alphas like Theron, too strong to control, were eliminated not through war, but through isolation, through shame, through making them believe they were monsters. I accept the verdict. Theron's voice rolled through the hall like distant thunder. Deep, resonant, the kind of voice that could command armies, the kind of voice that should have made Omegas feel safe. Instead, it made Celestine flinch. I will rule alone, he continued, each word carefully controlled. I will not subject another Omega to the risk. The bond trials end today. He stood. The movement made half the front row step back instinctively. Even his allies, the few council members who had supported him, could not quite hide their relief that he was not their problem to solve. Theron looked at Celestina one last time. She could not meet his eyes. You are free to go, my lady, with my blessing and my gratitude for your courage in coming this far. You will want for nothing. It was more grace than she had shown him, but grace was all he had left. He descended the dais steps. The crowd parted like water before a stone, and Theron Blackstone, AlphaKing of the Northern Realm, walked alone through a sea of his subjects. None of them reached out. None of them met his gaze. He was their king, and he had never been more isolated in his life. The marketplace stank of desperation and unwashed bodies. 300 miles south of Shadow Peak Palace in the border city of Asheville, a different kind of trial was taking place. No silk here, no marble floors or ceremonial robes. Just mud-packed earth, rough wooden platforms, and the sharp, acidic smell of fear. Lyria Ashen stood in a cage barely large enough for her to stand upright. Iron bars crusted with rust pressed against her spine. Her bare feet ached from hours of standing on the splintered wood floor. The thin shift they had given her, gray and shapeless, hung off her frame like a burial shroud. Her dark auburn hair, once her mother's pride, hung in matted tangles around a face marked with fresh bruises. She was Lot 47, property, merchandise. An Omega whose family debts had transferred to her the moment her father's heart gave out 6 months ago. 30,000 gold pieces. A sum so vast she could not comprehend it. A sum that had made her worth less than the paper the contract was written on. Around the platform, 150 bidders gathered. Merchants looking for servants. Minor nobles seeking bedwarmers. Labor masters buying bodies for the mines. They studied the Omegas on display with the same detached interest they might show cattle. Some took notes. Some called out crude assessments of hips and breasts and childbearing potential. Lyria kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, on the mountains in the distance where snow still capped the peaks despite spring's arrival. Her mother had loved those mountains, had told her stories of wolves that ran free in the high passes answering to no master but the moon. Lyria was not free, would never be free again, but she could still choose where to rest her gaze. The auctioneer, a rat-faced man in a stained vest, banged his gavel against the wooden block. Lot 47, Omega female, 22 years, unremarkable bloodline, no formal training. However, he consulted his notes with a grimace. Basic medical knowledge. Worked as a healer's assistant before family collapse. Literate, demonstrates concerning levels of independence and resistance to authority. A few bidders lost interest immediately. Difficult Omegas were more trouble than they were worth. Starting bid 500 gold. Silence, the crowd shifted. 500 was high for a damaged Omega with no connections. Lyria felt a flicker of dark hope. Perhaps no one would bid. Perhaps she would be sent to the labor camps instead, where at least the work might kill her quickly. Then a voice cut through the marketplace noise like a blade through silk. 1,000 gold. Every head turned. The crowd parted not out of respect, but out of instinctive self-preservation as Lord Cassius Drake strode toward the auction platform. He wore traveling clothes, expensive but understated. Nothing marked him as a member of the King's Council. Nothing except the way people scrambled to clear his path. Drake's eyes fixed on Lyria with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Not lust, something colder, more calculating. The way a scholar might examine an interesting specimen before dissection. My lord, the auctioneer nearly fell over himself, bowing. Your presence honors this humble market, but surely a common omega is beneath your... I said 1,000 gold. Drake's voice carried no warmth. Do you have other bidders, or shall we conclude this transaction? Silence answered him. No one bid against a council elder, not unless they wanted their next tax audit to be very, very thorough. Sold? The gavel cracked down. Lot 47 to Lord Cassius Drake. Drake's guards moved forward immediately. Professional, efficient. They unlocked Lyria's cage with keys that looked too new, too prepared, as if her sale had been arranged long before today. Lyria's instincts screamed. She had survived the slums of Asheville by trusting those instincts. They told her now that this man, this powerful man, who had paid 5 times her worth without blinking, wanted something worse than labor. Worse than betting, he wanted to hurt her. When the guards reached for her arms, Lyria moved, not away, toward. She gathered what moisture she could in her dry mouth and spat directly into Lord Drake's face. The marketplace went silent. Drake froze. Spittle dripped down his aristocratic cheek. For one heartbeat, his mask slipped. Lyria saw the rage beneath. The cold, calculating fury of a man who had never been defied by someone so far beneath him. Then his hand moved faster than she could track. The backhand caught her across the face with enough force to snap her head sideways. Pain exploded through her cheekbone. Copper filled her mouth. Spirit will be broken, Drake said quietly, wiping his face with a silk handkerchief. I have laboratories that specialize in such work. He turned to his guards. Take her to the holding cells. Keep her conscious. I want her aware for the journey north. Lyria's vision blurred as rough hands grabbed her. She tried to fight, but malnutrition and days without water had left her weak. They dragged her through the crowd. Some people looked away. Some watched with empty eyes that had seen too much suffering to register more. No one helped, but as they threw her into the back of an iron-barred wagon, as the door slammed shut and the lock clicked, home Lyria made herself a promise. She had nothing left. No family, no freedom, no future that did not end in pain. But she still had one thing Drake could not buy, her will to fight, and she would fight until her last breath. Night fell over Asheville like a shroud. In the holding cells beneath Drake's temporary estate, Lyria sat in absolute darkness. They had chained her wrists to the wall, not because she was dangerous, because Drake wanted her to know, to feel in her bones that she was owned. But they had made one mistake. The chain was old. And Lyria's mother had taught her something before the sickness took her, had pressed a small silver hairpin into Lyria's palm and shown her with the careful patience of a woman who knew she was dying how to pick locks. For when you need to be free, my daughter, for when the cage becomes unbearable. Lyria worked the hairpin into the lock mechanism. Her fingers shook, not from fear, from anticipation. The tumblers clicked, once, twice, 3 times. The shackle fell open. She remained perfectly still, listening. 2 guards outside, their conversation filtered through the heavy door. Complaints about the cold, bets on tomorrow's fights, the mundane concerns of men who saw her as nothing more than inventory. They would learn otherwise. Lyria moved to the door. It was locked from the outside, but the wood was old, rotted in places. She ran her fingers along the frame until she found a weak point near the bottom hinge. Pressed, tested. Then she kicked. The wood splintered with a crack that sounded like breaking bones. The guard's conversation cut off. Footsteps rushed toward the door, but Lyria was already moving. She squeezed through the gap, ignoring the splinters that tore her shit and scraped her skin. Emerged into the corridor just as the first guard reached for his sword. She had nothing. No weapon, no armor. Just desperation and the knowledge that recapture meant worse than death. So she ran. Behind her, shouts erupted. Boots pounded stone. An alarm bell clanged, but Lyria knew these cells. She had mapped them during the endless hours of darkness. Left at the first junction, right at the second, straight through the servants' passage that stank of refuse and rot, the kitchen, the delivery door, the night beyond. She hit the door at full speed. It flew open. Cold air and rain slammed into her like a physical force. Spring storms in the north were vicious. This one had turned the streets to rivers of mud, turned the world to gray sheets of water that made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Perfect. Lyria plunged into the storm. Her bare feet slipped in mud. Water soaked through her thin shift in seconds, the cold so intense it stole her breath. But she did not stop, could not stop. Behind her, she heard guards shouting, heard Drake's voice controlled even in fury directing the search. She ran toward the only place that made sense, the mountains, the wilderness, the vast uncaring wild where they might not follow, where she could disappear like smoke and rain. The forest swallowed her. Trees became shadows in the storm. Lyria crashed through underbrush thorns, tearing at her arms and legs. Her feet screamed with every step, blood mixed with rainwater, leaving a trail she could not hide. But adrenaline pushed her forward. Terror gave her strength her starved body should not possess. She had to lose them, had to find somewhere, anywhere, just a few hours to rest, to think, to plan something beyond blind flight. The forest floor gave way without warning. Lyria's foot plunged through what she thought was solid ground. Icy water rushed up to her waist. She gasped, flailing, and realized with creeping horror where she was. The servant tunnels, the ancient passages that connected Drake's estate to the main city. Passages that ran beneath the forest. Passages that in heavy rain flooded. She tried to climb back out, but the mud walls were too slick. The current pulled at her legs. Not strong yet, but growing stronger by the second as runoff poured in from a dozen hidden streams. Move forward or drown. Lyria moved forward. The tunnel was barely 5 feet high. She had to crouch, hands braced against the slime-covered walls as water rose from her waist to her ribs. The torch she had grabbed from the cell had died the moment she entered. Darkness pressed around her like a living thing. Something brushed against her leg. Soft, sinuous. She bit back a scream and pushed harder. The water climbed. Chest height now. Her teeth chattered so hard she feared they would break. Every breath was a battle between maintaining silence and the desperate need to gasp against the cold. The tunnel stretched on forever, or for 30 feet. In the absolute darkness with water now at her shoulders, Lyria lost all sense of distance. All sense of anything except the primal need to survive. Her head bumped something solid, a ceiling. The tunnel was filling faster than she could move. In minutes, there would be no air left. Lyria dove. She could not see, could not breathe, could only push forward through water that filled her nose and mouth, that burned her lungs and made her vision explode with stars she could not actually see. Her fingers scraped stone, found nothing, found air. She erupted from the water surface, gasping, retching, pulled herself onto a narrow stone ledge barely wide enough for her body. Collapsed there, shaking so violently her bones felt like they would shake apart. Behind her, the water continued to rise. The tunnel she had come through was completely submerged now. There was no going back, only forward. When she could breathe without retching, when her limbs stopped shaking quite so badly, Lyria forced herself to stand. The ledge led to stairs. The stairs led up. Toward what? She did not know, did not care. Anything was better than drowning in darkness. She climbed. The stairs ended in a cellar, abandoned, half collapsed. But there was a door at the far end. Weak moonlight filtered through cracks in the wood. Lyria pushed through it and stepped into a nightmare. The bridge had been beautiful once. A testament to ancient engineering, it spanned a gorge so deep the bottom disappeared into mist. Carved stone supports and rope railings woven by masters. A crucial passage between the southern cities and the northern kingdoms. Now it was a death trap. Time and weather had rotted the ropes. Storms had cracked the stone. Whole sections of the walkway were missing, replaced by gaps that showed nothing but the abyss below. The bridge swayed in the wind, groaned like a living thing in pain, and it was the only way across. Lyria stood at the edge, staring at the impossible choice before her. Behind her, she could hear them, Drake's hunters. They had found her trail again. The brief respite in the cellar was over. Ahead lay 60 feet of rotted rope and faith. She had neither the strength nor the certainty to make it, but she had the will. Lyria stepped onto the bridge. The first plank held. So did the second. She moved carefully, testing each board before trusting it with her weight. The wind tore at her soaked shift, made the bridge sway in stomach-lurching arcs. She gripped the rope railing so hard her knuckles went white. Halfway across the rope, snapped. Not completely, just one of the support lines. But the sudden shift threw Lyria sideways. She grabbed for the remaining rope with both hands, feet scrabbling for purchase on the narrow planks. The bridge tilted at a sickening angle. Below her, the gorge opened like a mouth full of teeth made from jagged rocks and rushing water. Lyria hung there, arms burning, fingers slipping on wet rope. One foot braced on a plank, the other dangling over nothing. She could see her death clearly. The fall, the impact, the brief, brilliant pain before darkness. And she was so tired. For a moment, just a moment, surrender seemed like mercy. Then she thought of Drake, of his cold eyes, of the laboratories he had mentioned, of dying on his terms, not her own. Rage gave her strength, fear could not. Lyria pulled, muscle and tendons screaming. She got one knee on a plank, then the other. Then moving on her belly like a snake, she crawled the remaining 30 feet. Did not let herself think about the gaps. The missing boards, the way the bridge swayed with each movement. She just moved. Her hands touched stone. Solid ground, the far side. Lyria collapsed on the cliff edge, sobbing with relief and exhaustion and the bone-deep knowledge that she should be dead. But she was not. Not yet. The forest beyond the gorge was different, older. The trees grew so thick their canopy blocked out the stars. Roots twisted across the ground like serpents frozen mid-strike. And somewhere in that darkness, wolves called to each other. Lyria knew about the wolves. Everyone in the north knew. The mountain packs were enormous, territorial. They viewed humans as prey when food ran scarce. And spring was always a scarce time. Cubs needed feeding. Mothers needed strength. She needed to keep moving. But her body was failing. 2 days without food, a night of running through storms and freezing water. Cuts that had stopped bleeding only because she had no blood left to spare. Hypothermia settling into her bones like winter's final embrace. Lyria stumbled, caught herself on a tree, stumbled again. The forest floor rose up to meet her. She landed hard, did not get up. Behind her, impossibly close, a branch snapped. Lyria's head jerked up. 3 pairs of eyes reflected the moonlight that penetrated the canopy. Green gold, feral, hungry, wolves. The lead wolf was massive, easily the size of a small horse. Its fur was the color of smoke and shadows. Muscles rippled beneath the pelt as it moved forward. Slow, confident, the way a predator moves when it knows the prey is already dead. The other 2 flanked it, smaller but no less dangerous. A hunting pack, professional killers. Lyria's survival instinct finally broke through the exhaustion. She scrambled backward, hands found a tree trunk. She pulled herself up, desperate, frantic. Her feet found purchase on the rough bark. She climbed. The wolves lunged. Lyria hauled herself higher. Bark tore at her palms. Her toes screamed as she forced them into impossible holds. Below her jaws snapped. One wolf leaped. Its teeth closed on the torn hem of her shift. Lyria screamed and pulled. The fabric ripped. She climbed higher, 15 feet up, 20. The branches here were thinner. They bent under her weight. But the wolves could not follow. They circled the base of the tree, pacing, watching, patient. Lyria clung to the trunk. Her entire body shook, from cold, from terror, from the absolute knowledge that she could not hold on forever. Eventually her strength would fail. She would fall, and they would be waiting. Hours passed. The wolves did not leave. They sat. Sometimes they paced. Once the lead wolf howled, a long, haunting sound that echoed through the forest and was answered by distant calls. More were coming. Lyria pressed her forehead against the rough bark, closed her eyes, let the tears come finally silently. No one would hear them. No one would know. In the morning, Drake's hunters would find her bones, if the wolves left anything at all. She had fought so hard, run so far, survived impossible odds, and it meant nothing. Her fingers slipped, just slightly, just enough to jolt her awareness back. The branch under her left foot cracked. A warning, a countdown. Please, Lyria whispered to the darkness, to the moon, to any god that might be listening. Please, I do not want to die like this. The forest did not answer, but deep in the shadows something moved, something larger than the wolves, something that made the lead wolf's ears flatten against its skull, something that smelled of power and smoke and cedar. Lyria's vision blurred. Black spots danced at the edges. Her grip failed. She fell. And the last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was a roar that was not quite wolf and not quite human. A sound of pure primal fury that shook the trees and sent the wolves scattering like smoke before wind. Then nothing. Just the darkness. And the faint, impossible sensation of being caught. Of arms strong as steel and gentle as prayer, cradling her against a chest that rumbled with words she could not understand. I have you. You are safe. I have you. But consciousness was already gone, and Lyria Ashen, who had survived auction and storm, and wolves finally surrendered to the mercy of oblivion. Lyria woke to silk, not the rough linen of charity houses, not the bare stone of holding cells, not the dirt and leaves of a forest floor where she should have died. Silk, smooth against her skin, cool and impossibly soft. The kind of fabric she had only ever seen from a distance, adorning women whose lives existed in a different world than hers. Her eyes opened slowly. Dawn light filtered through windows so tall they seemed to reach the sky. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed in dark wood overlooking mountains that touched clouds. The room around her was vast. Not empty vast. Lived-in vast. A fireplace large enough to stand in crackled with embers. Bookshelves lined one wall packed with volumes whose spines showed wear from actual reading. Weapons adorned another wall, swords and axes polished but clearly used. Everything was functional. Real. Nothing like the ostentatious display of wealth she had seen in Drake's estate. This was a warrior's chamber. A king's chamber. Lyria sat up too quickly. Pain flared through her feet, her hands a dozen cuts she had not had time to catalog during the flight. She hissed and pulled back the furs, the impossibly thick blankets that had kept her warm through what must have been the entire night. Her feet were wrapped in clean white bandages. Professional. Precise. Someone with medical knowledge had tended her wounds while she slept. Her hands were similarly wrapped. The cuts on her arms had been cleaned and treated with salve that smelled of comfrey and calendula. Even her face, she realized, touching her swollen cheek carefully, had been treated. She was clean. Someone had washed the mud and blood from her skin, changed her from the torn shift into a nightdress that was far too large, hanging off her thin frame like a child wearing her father's clothes. But it was clean, soft, and it smelled of cedar and smoke and something else, something that made her hindbrain whisper one word: safe. Then she saw him. Theron Blackstone, AlphaKing of the Northern Realm, was asleep on the floor. Not in a chair by the fire, not on a couch. On the floor beside the door, his massive body curled in on itself in a way that looked painful. He still wore his formal trousers from whatever event had occupied his day, but his chest was bare. Scars crisscrossed the expanse of his back. Old wounds from battles she could not imagine. His dark hair fell across his face, hiding his features. One arm was tucked beneath his head. The other lay across his chest, hand curled into a loose fist. He had given her his bed and slept on the floor like a guard dog. Lyria's throat tightened. She had seen alphas her entire life, seen the way they took what they wanted, the way they asserted dominance through violence and fear, the way they treated omegas like property toys burdens. This alpha, this king who everyone called a monster, had bandaged her feet while she slept, had given her his bed, had chosen the hard floor over making her uncomfortable. Something inside her chest cracked open. A place that had been frozen solid with fear and rage. A place she thought had died in the auction house. It cracked. Just slightly. Just enough to let in a sliver of impossible hope. She must have made a sound. Some small involuntary noise. Because Theron's eyes opened. He was on his feet in one fluid motion. Silent. Controlled. Every muscle coiled tight. The movement should have been threatening. Should have sent her scrambling backward. But he stopped the moment he saw her sitting up, staring at him with wide eyes. "You are awake." His voice was rough from sleep, deep enough to feel in her chest, but careful, always careful, like he was afraid of scaring her with volume alone. Lyria nodded slowly, found her voice. It came out smaller than she intended. "You slept on the floor." Theron's jaw tightened. He did not move closer, stayed by the door, keeping distance between them. "You needed the bed. You are the king." When you were injured. The logic was so simple, so absolute, as if there was no other possible choice, as if her comfort mattered more than his crown. Lyria looked at him. Really looked. In the daylight, he was even larger than she remembered from the forest. 7 feet of muscle and power barely contained by human skin. His shoulders were broad enough to block doorways. His hands resting at his sides were the size of dinner plates. Every nightmare her Omega instincts should have screamed about. But his eyes, his eyes, dark gray like storm clouds over mountains. And in them she saw exhaustion, loneliness, a quiet shame so bone deep it made her ache. "Why did you save me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Theron was silent for a long moment. His gaze dropped to the floor. "You were in danger. I was nearby. There was no choice to make. There is always a choice. Not for me." His voice dropped even lower. "Not when someone is hurting." Lyria's fingers twisted in the silk sheets. "The wolves, you fought them off." "I did. Why not just let them finish it? I am nobody, nothing. A runaway Omega with a price on her head." Theron's head snapped up. His eyes met hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "You are not nothing." The words rang through the chamber like a bell. Final. Absolute, not up for debate. Lyria felt tears burn behind her eyes. She had not cried during the auction, had not cried in the cells or the tunnels or even when the wolves circled. But this unexpected gentleness, from the one man everyone said was incapable of it, broke something loose. She looked away quickly, blinked hard, refused to let him see. Theron moved to the table by the windows, poured water from a crystal pitcher into a glass, brought it to the bedside table but did not hand it to her directly. Set it within reach and step back, always maintaining distance. There is food as well. When you are ready, you should eat. Lyria stared at the water, at the tray of bread and cheese and fruit that she had not noticed before. Her stomach twisted with hunger, so intense it hurt. But years of surviving the slums had taught her nothing came free. What do you want from me? Her voice was steadier now, hard. The voice of someone who had learned to negotiate from positions of weakness. Theron's expression shuddered. Nothing. Everyone wants something. I want you to be safe, to heal, to eat and rest and recover your strength. He paused, met her eyes again. That is all. Lyria searched his face for deception, for the cruel twist of lip that meant lies, for the predatory gleam that meant danger. She found only sincerity, and God's help her, she almost believed it. Who are you running from? Theron asked quietly. The question was too perceptive, too close to truth she could not speak without endangering him. Because men like Drake did not forgive interference, did not allow their property to simply disappear. Someone who will come looking for me. Lyria reached for the water, drank deeply. The cool liquid soothed her raw throat. Someone powerful, someone who will not stop until he finds me. Then he will have to go through me. The certainty in those words made her pause mid-drink. She set the glass down carefully. You do not even know who I am. I know you ran barefoot through a storm, survived flooded tunnels and a rotted bridge that should have killed you, climbed a tree with wolves at your heels, and held on for hours when anyone else would have fallen. Theron's voice carried something that might have been respect. I know you are a survivor. That is enough. And if I bring danger to your door, let it come, no hesitation, no fear, just the flat certainty of a man who had never lost a battle. Lyria's hands trembled. She set them in her lap to hide it. Why would you risk anything for me? Theron was quiet for so long, she thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when you looked at me in that forest, when I pulled you from that tree, you did not scream. You did not try to run. You just looked at me like I was a man, not a monster. The confession hung in the air between them, raw, vulnerable, the kind of truth that costs something to speak aloud. Lyria understood then, understood what the whispers had not told her, that this king, this alpha everyone feared, had been rejected so many times he had started to believe the lies, had started to see himself through the lens of their terror. I am not afraid of you, she said softly. Theron's laugh was bitter, broken. You should be. Why? He gestured to himself with barely restrained frustration. Look at me, I am too large, too strong. I could hurt you without meaning to, could break you in a dozen ways just by existing near you. You bandaged my feet while I slept. Lyria's voice was steady now, clear. Your hands are gentle. I can see it in the way you pour water, the way you step back to give me space, the way you slept on the floor rather than make me uncomfortable. That does not change what I am. What are you then? She met his eyes directly, challenging. Tell me what you think you are. Theron's jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists at his sides, those massive scarred hands that trembled slightly despite his control. I am the reason 21 Omegas chose exile over my touch. I am the king who was declared unfit to bond. I am too much. I have always been too much. The pain in his voice made Lyria's chest ache. She had been called worthless, broken, useless. She knew what it was like to be measured and found wanting, to internalize the cruelty until it became truth. But she had never had hundreds of people witness her rejection, had never had healers catalog her flaws for public record, had never been condemned to rule a kingdom alone because her very nature made her dangerous. Can I ask you something? She said. Theron nodded stiffly. Will you give me your hand? He went absolutely still, every muscle locked. Lyria, I do not think, please. The single word stopped him. Lyria extended her hand across the space between them, palm up, an offering, an invitation. Theron stared at her outstretched hand like it was a trap, like touching her would unleash something terrible. His breathing quickened, shallow, controlled, the breathing of a man fighting himself. "I could hurt you," he whispered. "You will not. You cannot know that. Then let me find out." Slowly, so slowly it seemed to take forever, Theron lifted his hand, extended it toward hers. His fingers were twice the length of hers, scarred from battle, calloused from weapon work. They trembled visibly now, hovered just above her palm. "I am afraid," he admitted. The confession seemed torn from somewhere deep, somewhere he usually kept locked away. Of what? Of proving them right, of being the monster they said I was. Lyria's throat tightened, but she did not lower her hand, did not pull away. "You are shaking." "I know." "Why?" His voice broke. "Because no one has asked to touch me in 6 years." The words hit her like a physical blow. 6 years. 6 years of isolation. 6 years of being untouchable. 6 years of believing himself too dangerous for something as simple as human contact. Lyria closed the distance herself, wrapped her small hand around his, her fingers barely making it halfway around his palm. His skin was warm, rough, and utterly completely still, as if he had turned to stone the moment they connected. "See," she whispered, "I am still here." Theron's breath shuddered out. His thumb moved, just barely, the lightest pressure across her knuckles, reverent, terrified, like he was touching something infinitely precious that might shatter. "You are so small," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "And you are so careful." His eyes lifted to hers, and in them she saw wonder. The kind of expression a man might wear when witnessing something he thought impossible. A miracle rendered in flesh and bone, and the simple act of holding hands. They stood like that, connected across the space of a king's bedchamber, his hand engulfing hers, her grip steady and sure, neither pulling away. Finally, Lyria smiled, small, genuine. "You have dimples." Theron blinked. "What?" "When you almost smile. Right there." She gestured vaguely with her free hand. "I did not notice before." "I do not smile. You almost did just now." And God's help him, she was right. The corner of his mouth had twitched, just slightly, the ghost of an expression he had not worn in years. Lyria's smile widened, and something inside Theron Blackstone, something that had been frozen solid with shame and isolation, cracked. Just slightly, just enough to let in warmth. They stood in the morning light, King and Omega, holding hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time since 21, rejections had carved him hollow, Theron allowed himself to hope. Perhaps he was not a monster after all. Perhaps he had just been waiting for someone brave enough to see the truth. The knock came at midday, sharp, urgent, the kind of knock that demanded immediate attention. Theron's entire body tensed. He had been showing Lyria the books on his shelves, their hands still loosely linked, when the sound shattered the peace they had built. He released her immediately, stepped between her and the door, pure alpha instinct taking over. "Your Majesty." The voice beyond the door belonged to Captain Marcus Head of the Palace Guard. Loyal, competent, and clearly agitated. "The Council demands your presence. Immediately. They have brought formal charges." Lyria's face went pale. "Drake." Theron's jaw clenched. He had known this was coming, known the moment he granted her sanctuary that there would be consequences. But he had thought they would have more time. "Stay here," he told Lyria quietly. "Lock the door behind me. Let no one in, no one except me." "What are they going to do? Try to take you from me?" His voice dropped to something lethal, absolute. "I will not let them." He moved to the wardrobe, changed from sleeping clothes to formal attire. Black tunic with the royal crest, leather bracers, boots that added another inch to his already imposing height, not armor, but close. A reminder to the council that he was not just a king, he was a weapon-choosing restraint. When he turned back, Lyria was standing, despite her injuries, despite the bandages and the exhaustion still visible in every line of her body, standing straight, defiant. "I should come with you," she said. Absolutely not. They are going to talk about me like I am not there, like I have no voice. I will not hide while men decide my fate." Theron recognized the look in her eyes. The same look she had worn when spitting at Drake. The look of someone who had been pushed past their breaking point and decided to push back. He should order her to stay, should use his authority as king to keep her safe behind locked doors. But he had seen what happened to Omegas, who were silenced, had watched Celestine shake on that platform voiceless, her fate decided by men who saw her as commodity. And he had vowed in that moment of his own rejection to never do the same. If you come, he said carefully, they will attack you. They will say things designed to hurt, designed to make you feel small. I am used to feeling small. I am not. The words came out harder than intended. I am not used to watching people I care about being hurt, and I do not know if I can remain controlled if they push too far. Lyria stepped closer, within arm's reach. Then we will both practice restraint. Despite everything, Theron almost smiled. The council chamber was a circular room of cold stone and older hate. 12 chairs arranged in a half moon around a central platform where Theron now stood. Not all the chairs were occupied. Some council members had the decency to absent themselves from this farce. But the ones who mattered, the ones who held real power, sat in judgment. Lord Cassius Drake at the center, silver-haired, cold-eyed, smiling. Beside him, Elder Matthias Stone, the council's legal expert. The man who could twist law into weapons. And in the third seat to Theron's carefully hidden surprise, Lady Seraphina Nightshade, Drake's niece, an alpha female from one of the oldest bloodlines. She should not have had a council seat. She was too young, too inexperienced, unless Drake had been planning this longer than Theron realized. Your Majesty, Drake stood, gestured to the platform with false deference. Thank you for attending on such short notice. We have a rather delicate matter to address. Theron said nothing. Let his silence speak. Drake's smile widened. The Omega you granted sanctuary to last night. Lyria Ashen. She is registered property under a legally binding shadow contract. He produced a scroll, unfurled it with theatrical precision. Signed it 3 months ago when her family's debts were transferred. 30,000 gold pieces, purchased legally at public auction. She belongs to me. Sanctuary law supersedes contract law, Theron said evenly. She sought protection. I granted it. The matter is closed. Is it? Elderstone leaned forward. His voice was dry, academic, the tone of someone citing precedent. Or is this another example of the instability we have witnessed, your inability to think clearly when presented with an Omega? The temperature in the room dropped. Theron's hands curled into fists at his sides. The stone floor beneath his feet groaned under the pressure. Choose your next words carefully, Elder. But Drake raised a hand, playing peacemaker. No one questions your authority, Your Majesty. We question your judgment. 21 failed bond trials, 21 rejections, and now suddenly you are harboring a runaway Omega in your private chambers. He let the implication hang. Let the council members exchange knowing looks. It appears, Drake continued, that you have developed an attachment, an emotional compromise that prevents you from ruling objectively. The healers declared you physically incompatible with any Omega, yet here you are risking kingdom stability for one damaged girl. She is not damaged. The words came out sharper than Theron intended. He saw Drake's smile widen, saw the trap closing. Then what is she? Seraphina spoke for the first time. Her voice was cultured, elegant, poisonous. Because from where we sit, she is a distraction, a liability, a woman who makes you forget that you were deemed unfit. I know what the healers said. Do you? Stone stood now, gestured dramatically to the empty gallery. This kingdom needs stability. It needs a king who can rule without compromise, not one who is emotionally compromised by a woman he cannot have. You are declaring her unfit for you, Drake added, his tone falsely sympathetic. For your own good, for the kingdom's good. Return her to me and we will forget this ever happened. You can continue ruling, alone, as you were meant to. Theron's vision narrowed. The chamber walls seemed to close in. Every word was designed to cut, to remind him of his failures, to position his compassion as weakness. He opened his mouth to respond, to unleash the fury building in his chest. The chamber door slammed open. Every head turned. Lyria Ashen stood in the doorway, barefoot still, wearing an oversized tunic that hung to her knees, her hair loose around her shoulders, bandages visible on her hands and feet. She was small, trembling, but her eyes burned with something none of them had expected. Fury. You will not speak about him like that. The chamber went silent. Drake's smile faltered. Excuse me, Lyria stepped forward, each step clearly painful, but she did not stop, did not waver. I said you will not speak about him like that, Stone sneered. You have no voice here, Omega. You are property. I am a person. Her voice cracked like a whip. And so is he. She turned to face the council directly. This small wounded Omega facing down the most powerful men in the kingdom. You sit here in your fine chairs with your fine titles, and you call him unfit. You who auction Omegas like cattle, You who let men hunt women through streets for sport. You who measure worth by bloodline and treat people as commodities. Her hands shook, but her voice grew stronger. How dare you? How dare you sit in judgment? Serafina stood, eyes flashing. You are hysterical. She is right. Theron's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. He stepped forward, not in front of Lyria, beside her, and the message was clear. Lyria Ashton is no longer your property, Lord Drake, Theron said. His tone was absolute, final. As of this moment, I am claiming her as royal ward under my personal protection. Any attempt to remove her from this palace, any threat made against her, will be considered an act of treason against the crown. Drake shot to his feet. You cannot. I can and I have. Theron's gaze swept across the council. This meeting is over. He turned, offered his arm to Lyria. She took it without hesitation, and together they walked toward the door. Behind them, the council erupted in outrage, demands, threats, but Theron did not stop, did not look back. The doors closed. Silence fell, and in that silence, Lord Cassius Drake turned to Elderstone with a smile that was all teeth in poison. Well, Drake murmured, it seems we have a problem. Stone leaned closer. What do you propose? Drake's eyes glittered with malice. We remind the kingdom why kings like him should never be allowed to love. Serafina's lips curved. I can help with that. Behind closed doors in the shadows of power, the real conspiracy began to take shape. They returned to Theron's chambers in heavy silence. The moment the door closed behind them, Lyria's legs gave out. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation drained away all at once. She would have fallen if Theron had not caught her. He swept her up with terrifying ease, carried her to the bed like she weighed nothing, set her down with such gentleness it made her chest ache. You should not have come, he said quietly, but there was no anger in his voice, only concern. I could not let them talk about you like that. They have been talking about me like that for years. I'm used to it. That does not make it right. Lyria looked up at him. They want you to believe you are what they say, a monster, unfit, too dangerous to love. But you are not. Theron sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain distance even now. How can you be so certain? Because I have seen monsters, real ones, men who hurt without remorse, who take pleasure in causing pain. Her voice was steady. Sure, you are nothing like them. Lyria, you are afraid of yourself. I understand that, but fear does not make you dangerous. It makes you careful, and careful is what keeps people safe. Theron's hands flexed against his thighs. The healers were not wrong about the risks. Maybe not, but they were wrong about you. She reached out, took his hand again. You are not too much. You have never been too much. You are exactly what you need to be. Something in Theron's expression cracked, vulnerability bleeding through the careful control he maintained. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I might be more than they said. Lyria smiled, small but genuine. Because you are, and I will keep reminding you until you believe it yourself. They sat like that as afternoon light faded to dusk. Hands joined, silence comfortable. Two broken people finding unexpected wholeness in each other. Neither of them knew that in the floors below, Drake was already setting his trap, that in 3 days everything would come to a head, that the unity feast would become a battleground. But for now, in this moment, they had peace. And sometimes peace is enough. 2 days passed in careful routine. Theron showed Lyria the palace, the libraries with their endless shelves of books, the gardens where winter flowers bloomed despite the cold, the training yards where guards practiced their forms. He introduced her to Captain Marcus, who looked skeptical but respectful, to the head cook who immediately began preparing meals designed to help Lyria regain her strength, and to Mira. The kitchen Omega was perhaps 25 with dark hair braided back and hands marked by burn scars from years over hot stoves. She brought meals to the king's chambers, and on the second day she lingered after setting down the tray. Your Majesty, she said quietly, may I speak with Lyria alone? Theron looked to Lyria, who nodded. He stepped into the corridor, closing the door but remaining close. Always protecting, always careful. The moment they were alone, Mira's composed expression crumbled. You are the Omega from the auction, the one who spat at Lord Drake. Lyria tensed. How do you know that? Because I was there, in Asheville. I saw what you did. Mira's eyes burned with something fierce. And I have been waiting for someone brave enough to defy him. She moved closer, lowered her voice even further. My sister, Elena. She was like you, defiant, strong. 3 years ago, she spoke out against the Omega auctions at a council meeting, called them barbaric, said no person should be property. Mira's hands trembled. Drake had her arrested for disturbing the peace. 2 weeks later, she was found dead in her cell. They said it was suicide. But I know he had her killed. Lyria's throat tightened. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be careful. Mira gripped Lyria's arm. Drake is planning something. I hear things in the kitchens. The servants talk when they think we are not listening. What kind of things? The Unity Feast, in 3 days. Drake has been asking about the ceremonial wine, about who serves it, about the king's seating arrangements. She paused. And yesterday I saw him meeting with a hooded figure near the servants' entrance, someone who smelled of strange herbs and poisons. Lyria's blood ran cold. You think he means to poison the king? I think he means to do something terrible, and I think you need to be ready. Before Lyria could respond, Mira pressed something into her hand, a small silver key. This opens the service passages, the hidden corridors servants use. If you need to move through the palace unseen, these will keep you safe. She met Lyria's eyes. And if you need help stopping Drake, you call for me. I may be just a kitchen Omega, but I know this palace better than any guard, and I owe my sister justice, Mama. Lyria closed her fingers around the key. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Thank me when Drake is in chains where he belongs. Mira left as quietly as she had come. Theron returned a moment later, concern etched in every line of his face. What did she say? Lyria looked at the key in her palm, at Theron's worried eyes, and made a choice. She offered to help, if we need it. It was not a lie, just not the whole truth, because Lyria understood something crucial. If she told Theron about Drake's planning now, he would confront the council immediately. And without proof, without evidence, Drake would deny everything, would twist it into more proof of Theron's instability. No, if Drake was planning something for the Unity Feast, Lyria needed to find evidence first, needed to catch him in the act, even if it meant putting herself in danger, even if it meant lying to the one person who had shown her nothing but honesty. That night, after Theron had fallen asleep on the floor again, Lyria lay awake in the darkness. Her mind raced. 3 days. The Unity Feast was in 3 days, and Drake was planning something that required poison and secrecy. She had to find out what. Carefully, silently, Lyria slipped from the bed. She had asked Theron earlier where her old shift was, claiming she wanted to wash it as a memento of survival. He had shown her the servant's laundry, had not questioned why she might want to keep such a tattered thing. Now she pulled on a simple dress borrowed from the palace stores. Dark, nondescript, the kind servants wore. Wrapped the key Mira had given her in a cloth and tucked it into her pocket. Theron's breathing remained deep and even. Good. She did not want to wake him. Did not want to explain where she was going. Lyria moved to the door, opened it with agonizing slowness. The corridor beyond was empty, lit by dying torches. She slipped through, closed the door behind her, and stopped. Where was she even going? The palace was enormous. Drake's quarters could be anywhere, and she had no idea where he might keep poison or evidence of conspiracy. But Mira had said he met someone near the servants' entrance, which meant the lower levels, which meant going somewhere. Lyria spun. Her heart leaped into her throat. Lady Seraphina Nightshade stood at the corridor's end, dressed in a deep crimson gown that made her look like spilled blood against the stone walls. Her blonde hair was elaborately braided. Her eyes were cold. The king's little project, Seraphina purred, moving closer with predatory grace. Out wandering the halls at night. How suspicious. Lyria's mind raced. I could not sleep. I was looking for the kitchens, for water. The kitchens are in the opposite direction. Seraphina's smile was all teeth. But you knew that, did not you, because Mira has been helping you. Lyria's blood turned to ice. Oh yes, I know about your little kitchen Omega friend. Did you think we would not notice, that we would not have eyes watching the king's chambers? Seraphina laughed. You are so naive, so perfectly predictably naive. She moved faster than Lyria could react. Her hand shot out, grabbed Lyria's arm in a grip that was all alpha strength. Bruising, painful. Drake wants to see you, now. Let me go. No, I do not think I will. Seraphina's other hand covered Lyria's mouth before she could scream. Because the king cannot protect you if he does not know you are gone. And by the time he wakes up, you will be far beyond his reach. Lyria struggled, kicked, tried to bite the hand over her mouth, but Seraphina was stronger, trained. She dragged Lyria down the corridor, away from Theron's chambers toward the servants' stairs. Do not fight, Seraphina whispered in her ear. It will only hurt more when Drake is finished with you. They descended into darkness, into the belly of the palace where servants scurried like rats and torches burned low, where no one would hear Lyria scream, and in his chambers above Theron slept on. Unaware that the woman he had sworn to protect was being dragged into the very nightmare he had tried to save her from, Theron woke to silence, the kind of silence that set every instinct screaming. He was on his feet before conscious thought, scanning the chamber with predator eyes. The bed was empty, the furs thrown back. Lyria was gone. No, not gone. Taken. He could smell it. The faint trace of another alpha in his space. Female. Expensive perfume masking the scent of malice. Seraphina. Theron's vision went red. He moved to the door with speed that should have been impossible for someone his size. Tore it open. The corridor guard jumped. "Where is she?" Theron's voice was barely human, a growl that vibrated through stone. "Your Majesty, I do not know. No one passed this way." Theron grabbed the guard by his armor, lifted him off his feet. "Lady Seraphina, where does she keep her quarters?" The guard's eyes went wide with terror. "The West Wing, 3rd floor." "But Your Majesty, you cannot just—" Theron dropped him, ran. He hit the West Wing like a battering ram. Nobles sleeping in nearby chambers woke to the sound of a king bellowing his rage. Guards scrambled from their posts. None dared stop him. Seraphina's door was locked. Theron's fist went through it. Wood exploded inward. The chamber beyond was empty, but he could smell Lyria here. Fear and pain and the copper tang of blood. "Where is she?" Footsteps. Captain Marcus appeared half-dressed, sword drawn. "Your Majesty, what is—" "Seraphina has Lyria. Find her. Now. Lock down the palace. No one leaves, no one." Marcus's face went pale. He understood what that tone meant. The king was past reason, past mercy. "Yes, Your Majesty." More guards arrived. Marcus started barking orders, search parties forming, doors being sealed. But Theron was not waiting for systematic searches. He was hunting. In the dungeons beneath the palace, Lyria hung from chains. Her arms were pulled above her head, wrists locked in iron cuffs attached to the ceiling. Her toes barely touched the ground. Every muscle screamed, but she did not scream. She would not give them the satisfaction. Lord Cassius Drake stood before her, still impeccably dressed despite the hour, still smiling that cold, calculated smile. "You have caused me considerable trouble," he said conversationally. "Running from the auction, surviving the impossible, earning the king's protection. Quite the impressive resume for a worthless Omega." Lyria glared at him, refused to speak. Drake circled her slowly. "But you see, your survival created an opportunity. The king has grown attached to you, compromised. And a compromised king is exactly what I need." He stopped in front of her, pulled a small crystal vial from his pocket. The liquid inside was dark red, almost black. "Bloodfire root extract. Do you know what this does to an alpha?" Lyria's stomach dropped. "It strips away all control, all that carefully maintained restraint your precious king prides himself on. 3 drops in his wine at tomorrow's feast, and he will become exactly what the healers warned about. A mindless beast driven only by instinct." Drake's smile widened. "And you will be there, in the hall, where everyone can watch him tear you apart. He would never. He will have no choice. The Bloodfire will make certain of that." Drake leaned closer. "And when the kingdom watches their beloved king brutalize an innocent Omega in front of 400 witnesses, they will finally see what I have known all along, that he is unfit to rule, that he is dangerous, that he must be executed." Lyria's mind raced. "And then you take the throne." "Precisely, the council will beg me to restore order. The people will demand it. And the Blackstone line ends not in glory but in blood and shame." He tucked the vial away. "Your death will serve a purpose. You should be honored." "You are insane." "I am practical." Drake turned to Seraphina, who stood guard at the dungeon door. "Keep her here, alive, but make sure she understands the futility of hope. I want her broken by tomorrow. I want the king to see that light in her eyes die before the bloodfire takes him." Seraphina's smile was cruel. "It will be my pleasure." Drake left. His footsteps echoed up the stone stairs. A door slammed somewhere above, and Lyria was alone with Seraphina. The alpha female moved closer, pulled a thin blade from her belt, not large enough to kill, but large enough to hurt. "This is your fault," Seraphina said quietly. "If you had just died in that forest, if you had never come here, he would still be alone, still be the monster everyone knew him to be." She pressed the blade against Lyria's arm. "But you made him hope. And I cannot forgive that. The blade cut. Lyria bit her lip until she tasted blood. Refused to scream. Nothing to say, Seraphina cut again. Shallow, precise, designed to cause maximum pain without significant damage. No begging, no tears. Lyria met her eyes. He is not a monster, and you will never make me believe he is. Seraphina's expression twisted. Rage and jealousy warring beneath the aristocratic mask. We shall see when he is tearing you apart tomorrow. When you are dying and he cannot stop himself. We shall see what you believe then. She raised the blade again. The dungeon door exploded inward. Theron filled the doorway, 7 feet of fury barely contained in human form. His eyes had gone full alpha gold. His hands were covered in blood. Not his own. Get away from her. The words were more growl than speech. Seraphina stumbled backward. For the first time, real fear crossed her face. Your Majesty, I can explain. Theron moved. One moment he was at the door. The next his hand was around Seraphina's throat. He lifted her off her feet, slammed her against the stone wall hard enough to crack it. You hurt her. His voice was inhuman. You hurt what is mine. Seraphina clawed at his hand, gasping, choking. Theron's grip tightened. Theron. Lyria's voice cut through the red haze. Theron, stop. He did not stop. Theron, please, look at me. Slowly, so slowly, his head turned. Those gold eyes found hers. And she saw him fighting. Fighting the alpha instinct that demanded blood for blood. Fighting the rage that wanted to crush and destroy. Fighting to be the man she believed he was. I am alive, Lyria said softly. I am here. I need you here. Not lost in rage, please. The gold in his eyes flickered, faded slightly. His grip on Seraphina loosened. The alpha female dropped to the ground, gasping, coughing, but alive. Theron crossed to Lyria in 2 strides, tore the chains from the ceiling with his bare hands. The metal shrieked, bent, broke. He caught her as she collapsed, gathered her against his chest with devastating gentleness. I have you, he whispered. I have you. Behind them, Seraphina tried to crawl toward the door. Theron's voice stopped her. Marcus, the captain, appeared in the doorway, took in the scene with wide eyes. Your Majesty, Lady Seraphina is under arrest for kidnapping and assault. Take her to the cells. Maximum security. No visitors, no exceptions. Yes, Your Majesty. Guards entered, hauled Seraphina to her feet. She tried to speak to protest, but Marcus's expression was ice. You touched the king's ward, he said quietly. You are fortunate he let you live. They dragged her away. Theron did not watch them go. His entire focus was on Lyria, on the cuts Seraphina had left, on the bruises forming on her wrists. I am going to kill her, he said. Not a threat, a statement of fact. No. Lyria's hand touched his face. You are going to be better than that, better than them. She hurt you, and she will face justice, royal justice, public justice, not murder and darkness. Lyria's voice was firm despite her pain. You are restraint, remember. You choose mercy, even when it is hard. Theron closed his eyes, pressed his forehead to hers. You should not have to be the one reminding me. Someone has to. She almost smiled. And I am here. I am still here. I thought I lost you. You will never lose me, not to Drake, not to fear, not to anything. He carried her from the dungeons, through corridors that emptied as guards and servants saw his expression and wisely fled. Back to his chambers, to safety, to the one place in the palace that was truly theirs. The healers were summoned. They treated Lyria's cuts, declared them shallow, painful but not dangerous. They offered her sleeping draughts. She refused. I need to tell you something, she said when they were alone again. About Drake, about the Unity Feast. And she told him everything. The overheard conversations, the bloodfire route, the plan to make him lose control. To destroy them both in one calculated move. Theron listened in silence. His expression grew darker with every word. He was going to use you as bait, he said finally. Flat, cold. Was going to poison me, make me kill you, and use it to take my throne. Yes. And you knew about this for 2 days. Lyria met his eyes. I did. Why did you not tell me? Because you would have confronted him without proof, and he would have denied everything. Would have made it seem like I was making you paranoid. Would have used it as more ammunition against you. So instead, you decided to find proof yourself. Theron's voice was dangerously quiet. By sneaking through the palace at night, alone, where Seraphina could catch you. where Drake could finish what he started in Asheville. Yes, that was incredibly foolish. It was necessary. It was... He stopped, took a breath. You could have died. So could you. Tomorrow, at the feast, if I had done nothing. Theron stared at her, this small, fierce Omega who had risked everything to save him. Again, who kept choosing him even when it meant walking into danger. We need evidence, he said finally. Real evidence. Something undeniable. Seraphina will talk. Under questioning. No, she will claim she was protecting the kingdom from my instability. We'll twist everything. Theron's mind worked. We need the poison itself. We need witnesses to the plot. We need Drake caught in the act. Lyria was quiet for a moment. Then, I know how to get it. The Unity Feast was held in the Grand Hall. 400 nobles packed the space. Every major house, every council member. Even commoners filled the galleries invited to witness what should have been a celebration of kingdom unity. The hall blazed with torchlight, tables overflowed with food, musicians played, servants moved through the crowd with wine and mead. Everything perfect, everything according to tradition. And at the high table on the dais overlooking it all sat the king and his ward. Theron wore full formal armor, black metal etched with silver wolves. His crown sat heavy on his brow, every inch the AlphaKing. But his eyes never left Lyria. She wore a gown of deep emerald, elegant, modest, the cuts on her arms hidden beneath long sleeves, the bruises on her wrists covered by delicate silver cuffs. But visible on her face was one deliberate mark, a shallow cut across her cheek that the healers had been instructed not to hide. Let them see what Seraphina had done. Let them see what the council's allies were willing to do. In the crowd below, Mira moved among the servants. 3 other kitchen Omegas flanked her, all of them watching, waiting. Lord Cassius Drake approached the dais. In his hands, a golden chalice, the ceremonial wine. His smile was perfect, practiced. The smile of a man who thought he had already won. Your Majesty, he announced, his voice carrying across the hall, in honor of the Unity Feast, we present the traditional toast. Wine from the king's own cellars, symbolizing prosperity and the strength of Blackmere. The crowd murmured approval. Tradition, pageantry, everything as it should be. Drake climbed the dais steps, extended the chalice toward Theron. To your health, your Majesty, and to the kingdom's continued reign under your wise rule. His eyes flickered to Lyria, just for a moment, triumph gleaming there, because he thought she was trapped. Thought she had no way to stop this without creating the scene, without looking hysterical. He was wrong. Theron stood. The movement silenced the hall instantly. His massive frame towered over Drake, over everyone. The torchlight cast shadows across his face that made him look carved from nightmare. He reached out and smashed the chalice against the stone floor. The crash was deafening. Wine splattered across the dais like blood. Crystal fragments glittered in the torchlight. The hall erupted in gasps, shocked whispers. Drake's face went pale. Your Majesty, what? Bloodfire root extract. Theron's voice cut through the chaos like a blade, designed to strip an alpha of all control, to trigger mindless violence. Is that not right, Lord Drake? The temperature in the room plummeted. Drake stammered. I have no idea what you are talking about. This is absurd. Liar. Lyria stood, every eye turned to her, this small Omega with a cut on her face and fire in her eyes. I overheard you, 3 nights ago, in the council antechamber, you and Elderstone and Lady Seraphina. Her voice rang clear, strong. You planned to poison the king with bloodfire root, to make him lose control during the feast, to make him kill me in front of everyone so the kingdom would turn against him. The hall exploded. Nobles shouting, guards moving, council members rising from their seats. This is a desperate lie from a frightened Omega, Drake snarled. She is trying to save herself from... We have witnesses, Theron interrupted coldly. He gestured to the shadows. Mira stepped forward. Then 3 more kitchen Omegas, all of them trembling but resolute. We heard them, Mira said. Her voice shook but carried. Lord Drake and Elder Stone. They said the Omega had to die to prove the king was a monster. They said everyone already believed it, that no one would question when he lost control. The second Omega added, they said once the king was executed, Drake would take the throne, that it had been his right all along. Stone shot to his feet, face twisted with rage. You would believe servants Omegas over council members who have served this kingdom for decades. I would believe the truth. Theron descended the dais steps, each footfall deliberate. The crowd parted before him. You wanted me to be a monster. You needed me to be one. Because a king who controls his power threatens everything you built your authority on. He stopped before Drake. You think strength is losing control, taking what you want, dominating through fear and violence. His voice dropped. Lethal. But true power is choosing restraint, is being strong enough to be gentle, is ruling through justice, not terror. Drake's mask finally cracked. You are weak. You always have been. A king who kneels to omegas, who lets them speak in council chambers, who treats property like people. He spat the words. You disgrace everything the crown should represent. No, Lyria's voice cut through. He represents what it could be, what it should be. A kingdom where strength protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them, where power serves justice instead of ambition. She pulled something from her gown, the crystal vial, the one she had stolen from Seraphina during the struggle in the dungeon. Before Theron arrived, before the rescue, she held it high for all to see. This is the poison Drake planned to use. Bloodfire root extract, 3 drops lethal, enough to strip any alpha of control. She looked at Drake. I took it from Lady Seraphina when she held me prisoner, when she and Drake planned to break me before using me as bait. The hall was dead silent. Arrest them, Theron commanded. Lord Cassius Drake, Elder Matthias Stone, on charges of conspiracy to commit regicide, attempted murder, treason against the crown. Guards surged forward. Drake tried to run, made it 3 steps before Marcus tackled him. Stone drew a hidden blade, was disarmed in seconds. Both men struggled, shouted, demanded lawyers and trials and rights they had never granted the Omegas they sold. No one listened. As they were dragged from the hall in chains, Drake's eyes locked on Theron with pure hatred. This changes nothing. You are still unfit, still too dangerous. The healers declared it. Everyone knows it. You will rule alone until the day you die, and the kingdom will be better for it. The healers were wrong. Every head turned. Lyria walked to the center of the hall, stood before 400 witnesses. If anyone here still believes the king is too dangerous to bond, let me prove you wrong, right here, right now. Her voice did not waver. I volunteer for a bond trial. Public. Witnessed. No healers declaring it impossible before we try. No fear. Just truth. The crowd erupted. Nobles shouting questions. Omegas gasping. But Lyria raised her hand. Silence fell. I am not special. No hidden bloodline. No secret power. Just an Omega who was sold at auction. Who ran through storms and survived wolves and climbed bridges that should have killed her. She looked at Theron. And I am not afraid of this king. I have never been afraid. Because I see what you are all too blind to see. She turned to address the crowd. He is not too much. He has never been too much. He is restraint given form. He is strength tempered by compassion. He is everything a king should be. And if you cannot see that, then the failure is yours, not his. The high priestess emerged from the crowd. Ancient, gray-robed. She had performed 21 bond trials for this king, had witnessed 21 failures. She looked at Lyria with something that might have been respect. This is highly irregular, she said. So is poisoning a king, Lyria replied. The priestess almost smiled. Very well. If both parties consent, we proceed. She mounted the dais, raised her hands. The hall fell into breathless silence. Do you, Theron Blackstone, AlphaKing of the Northern Realm, take this Omega as your bonded mate, to cherish and protect in strength and in vulnerability, for all the days you draw breath? Theron's voice was steady. Certain, if she will have me. And do you, Lyria Ashen, accept this bond, knowing the risks, knowing the fears, knowing that this choice cannot be undone? Lyria's answer rang clear. I choose him. I have always chosen him. The priestess brought their hands together. Theron's massive palm against Lyria's small one. Then by the power vested in me, witnessed by this kingdom, I declare the bond trial begun. The mating bond snapped into place. Not gently, like lightning finding ground. Gold light erupted from their joined hands, spread up their arms, engulfed them both in radiance so bright people had to shield their eyes. Theron gasped, fell to his knees. The bond roared through him like wildfire, every instinct screaming. Claim, take, dominate. The alpha rising with unstoppable force. But he had trained for this. 6 years of restraint, 6 years of learning control, 6 years of choosing to be gentle when everything in him demanded violence. Lyria knelt before him, placed her free hand on his face. I am here. I am not afraid. You will not hurt me. Theron's eyes had gone full alpha gold, his breathing ragged, every muscle trembling. Lyria, look at me. Her voice was soft but absolute. See me, not the fear, not the lies. Just me, just us. His eyes focused, found hers, held. The gold faded, slowly. His breathing evened. The trembling stopped. And 400 witnesses watched as AlphaKing Theron Blackstone chose control over instinct, chose his mate over his nature, chose to be the man she believed he was. The light faded, the bond settled, warm and sure and unbreakable between them. Lyria smiled. I am still here. Theron pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. Always. You will always be here. The priestess's voice carried across the stunned hall. The bond is accepted, the trial complete. Theron Blackstone is bonded. She paused, let the weight of it sink in. And the kingdom has its queen. The hall erupted, not in whispers, in cheers, because they had witnessed the impossible. A king learning to trust himself, and Omega teaching him how, a bond that should have been deadly becoming, instead a testament to restraint, to choice, to love strong enough to overcome fear. Everything changed in that moment, and Theron Blackstone finally understood that his strength had never been the problem. It was the foundation, the vessel. And Lyria was the wisdom that made that strength into something beautiful. 6 months passed like a dream made real. The kingdom transformed. Within weeks of Drake's arrest, Omega auctions were abolished. Shadow contracts voided. Every Omega given the choice to stay or leave their placements. Most stayed, but they stayed as employees, not property. With wages, with rights, with voices. The council was restructured. 4 Omega seats added. Mira was appointed to one representing the servants and common folk who had been voiceless for too long. Drake and Stone were tried publicly, found guilty, sentenced to life in the northern prisons where winter never ended. Seraphina was exiled to the southern territories, forbidden from ever returning to Blackmere on pain of death. And through it all, a king and queen ruled together. The coronation ceremony took place on the first day of winter. The grand hall was transformed. Flowers bloomed despite the season, brought from greenhouses and arranged with such care they seemed to glow. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been cleaned until they shone. The galleries were packed, not just nobles, commoners, servants, Omegas who had been freed, all of them witness to history. Lyria wore silver and white, a gown that caught the light like starfall embroidered with winter roses and thread of gold. Her auburn hair was braided with real winter roses, the rare ones that bloomed only in the coldest months. On her brow, a crown of silver and sapphires. Queen's crown, mate's crown. Crown earned through courage, not bloodline. Theron stood beside her in formal black and gold, his armor polished until it gleamed, his crown heavy with the weight of rule he no longer bore alone. The high priestess raised her hands. The hall fell silent. Today, we witness not just a coronation but a revolution. The crowning of a queen who was never meant to be. The acknowledgement that strength and gentleness are not opposites but partners. The beginning of a new age for Blackmere. She turned to Lyria first. Do you, Lyria Ashen, accept the crown of queen? Do you vow to rule with wisdom and compassion? To use your voice to speak for the voiceless? To remind your king when he forgets that he is enough? Lyria's voice rang clear. I do. I vow to never let him believe he is too much. To always remind him that he is enough. That he has always been enough. The priestess placed the crown on Lyria's head. Then she turned to Theron. And do you, Theron Blackstone, vow to rule as partner, not master? To listen as well as command? To remember that your queen chose you not despite your strength, but because of how you choose to wield it? Theron's voice was rough with emotion. I do. I vow to never let her believe she is too small. To always show her that her courage saved not just me, but this entire kingdom. That she is mighty beyond measure. The priestess smiled. Then by the power of old laws made new, I crown you both. King and queen, Alpha and Omega, equal partners in rule and heart. In a break from tradition, Lyria lifted Theron's crown and placed it on his brow herself. Reciprocal, mutual, a symbol that power shared was power multiplied. The hall erupted in applause that shook the rafters. That night, away from celebration and crowds, they stood on their private balcony. Winter stars burned overhead. Below, the city glowed with celebration fires. Music drifted up from the streets where commoners danced with nobles, Omegas, with Alphas, all barriers dissolved in joy. Theron's hand rested on Lyria's stomach, where new life grew. Still too early to be certain, But the bond whispered truths that healers would confirm in weeks to come. What if our child is like me? Theron asked quietly, the old fear still lurking in the shadows. Too big, too strong. Lyria covered his hand with hers. Then we will teach them what you taught me. That strength is not about power. It is about control, about choosing kindness when you could choose cruelty, about restraint. She turned in his arms, looked up at the man who had been called monster and unfit and too much, who had been proven wrong by the simple act of being loved. And we will teach them that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you, all of you, the strength and the fear and the vulnerability, and trust that they will stay. Theron pulled her close. You stayed. Always. They kissed under starlight. King and Queen. Alpha and Omega. Two broken people who had found each other in darkness and chosen to build light. Below them, the kingdom celebrated a new age. Omegas danced free. Council members who had supported the change toasted the future. And in the northern prisons, Drake and Stone faced the justice they had tried to deny others. Everything had changed. And Theron Blackstone, who had once been called the unfit crown, finally understood that his greatest strength had never been his size or power or ability to dominate. It was his capacity to love without breaking, to protect without crushing, to rule with both strength and gentleness. And beside him, Lyria Ashen proved that courage came in all sizes, that the smallest voice could shout down kingdoms, that being underestimated was only a disadvantage if you believed the lies. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were enough. Still here, Lyria whispered against his chest. Theron smiled, the real smile she had coaxed from him over months of patience and trust. Always. The stars watched. The kingdom slept in peace. Two hearts beat in perfect rhythm, restrained, controlled, powerful, and finally free.